Hello and a very warm welcome. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Sharanjit Lail, and it's a real delight to be here to moderate this next session, which is a really crucial session. We are looking at digital pathways to achieve sustainable energy. So thank you all for joining us this afternoon after lunch on a busy day here at the ADB Annual Meeting on the first day that we're kicking off. So we're very appreciative for all of you to be here. We'd love to, of course, hear from you throughout the session that we're about to have. So if you do have questions, we would love for you to ask them. Please do scan the QR code that was just on the screen a minute ago. It will come up on the screen again. If you take your phones out right now, in fact, and scan that QR code, you get a chance to ask these questions to our very distinguished speakers, which I'll aim to ask them at the end of the session. So thank you once again. Now, a short introduction. We know that, of course, digital transformations are happening everywhere in our lives, and digital technologies are playing such a key role changing everything that we do, including in how we harness, generate, distribute, and use energy. So in this session, we'll be talking to key leaders in the role. We'll be exploring how governments and private sector are all working together to come up with innovative strategies and ways to scale up clean energy, improve system reliability, and future-proof infrastructure. We're going to get some real insights from leaders across the public and private sectors on how to find digital pathways to sustainable energy. So let's begin with our opening remarks from Bhargav Dasgupta. He's the Vice President for Market Solutions from the ADB. Bhargav, the stage is yours.
Thank you, and so distinguished guests and panelists, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to welcome you to this very important session that we have here for you. The Office of Market Solutions oversees both our private sector operations as also our Office of Market Development and PPP, two areas that sit at the intersection of innovation, investment, and development. This seminar, organized by ADB's energy sector colleagues, brings together all these elements. It reflects ADB's integrated approach to tackling one of our region's most urgent priorities, driving investment in sustainable energy through digital innovation and strong public-private collaboration. A special welcome to Turkey, our newest borrowing member. Turkey's strong policy reforms and rapid renewable energy deployment show how ambition can translate into results. Your renewable energy achievements, Mr. Deputy Minister, have already set a high bar, and we are proud to now have the opportunity to work with you and collaborate with you on that journey. Today's theme, Powering the Future, Digital Pathways to Sustainable Energy, places digital innovation at the heart of the energy revolution. From smart grids to real-time forecasting, to AI-powered systems and regional data platforms, these technologies are unlocking new levels of resilience, efficiency, and scale. But, and this is the key, technology alone won't get us there. We need capital, expertise, and execution from the private sector. And we need clear policy and risk-sharing frameworks from governments. That's where ADB steps in. We blend concessional funds from commercial finance to de-risk bold ideas. We guarantee critical contracts so investors know that their money is safe. We structure public-private partnerships that align public goals with private incentives. And that's the role that we play as ADB. Now, today's panel brings together policymakers and regulators shaping national strategies, developers deploying cutting-edge digital solutions, investors and advisors scaling climate tech, and of course, ADB experts who will share how we make these models work on the ground. Together, we will explore how digital pathways can optimize grid stability, renewable energy integration, and minimize cost of power system operations, de-risk and mobilize private capital at scale, foster local innovation and inclusive access, enable regional cooperation and cross-border trade. We are honored to have an exceptional lineup of speakers from government, the private sector, and key partners. Your presence underscores the importance of our collective mission. I'm eager to hear from the panel on how we can harness these digital pathways. Thank you and good day.
Thank you, Bhargav. That's a great opening. Thank you for that. We know you're a busy man, so we do want to capture a quick photograph before you have to leave us. And with that, I'll be introducing the panelists onto the stage. So please welcome Simona Viscardi, the partner from McKinsey. We have the Honorable Osman Çelik, the Governor for Turkey, ADB and Deputy Minister of Treasury and Finance. Sri Pankaj Agarwal, the Secretary from the Minister of Power from India. Marco Arcelli, the CEO of Aqua Power. And Cleo Kawawaki, Director General and concurrent Head of Office of Markets Development and Public-Private Partnership from the ADB. Welcome to all of you. A big round of applause. And Bhargav, if you'd like to come and join us on stage, we're going to take a photo before we kick off with the panel. So can I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, to stand up and we'll get a collective photograph. Thank you. Chance for you to think up the questions now that you want to ask. Thank you very much. Wonderful. Gosh, that was a good photo. Thank you all. And what an absolute privilege and treat to have you all here with us. You're all incredible leaders in your field. So I'm going to start with an opening question, which is an opening question I will ask all of you. I know I introduced you all, your names, your titles, but tell us a little bit more about what you do, how you weigh in on this particular debate, what's your perspective, and how can we utilize digital pathways to achieve sustainable energy? So let's start with you, Simona.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks to the ADB for inviting me and welcoming here to this interesting panel. I'm a McKinsey partner based out of Milan, and I'm part of our sustainability and risk management practices. I serve financial institutions in Europe and in EMA, and also regulators, supervisors, and public banks. And in this role, I bring the finance perspective to the table with what over the last 10 years financial institutions had to do to master this transition, which to the point that Claude was making before, comes to a matter of managing complexities, understanding technologies, understanding sector pathways, and stuff which is not so common for financial institutions. And so I would love to bring how the financial domain has evolved over these years and how public and private sector can come together to facilitate the sustainability and technological transition. Thank you.
Thank you, Simona. And Governor Çelik?
Thank you, Shanajit. Let me start by thanking ADB for organizing this event. And I'm the Deputy Minister of Treasury and Finance in Turkey. And as one of my duties in the ministry, I am responsible for overseeing the Turkey's relations with MDBs. And this annual meeting is also special for us because it is our first time as a regional member. Until now, we are representing and participating for these meetings as a non-regional member, but now we are a regional member, and today I will share the Turkey's special case on sustainable energy transition. And In fact, what makes Turkey a special case, first, Turkey is among the most successful countries in leveraging the MDB's financing. And our experience represents a very successful journey in achieving energy transition and the clean energy. And as I noticed, the participant profile is highly diversified, and I am sure we would have a very productive and insightful discussion. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Deputy Minister. And Mr. Arcelli.
Thank you. I'm the CEO of Aqua Power. I've been in the position for about 2 years, coming from an experience in North America, Europe, and now I'm in the Middle East, heading the Saudi champion for renewable power. It's the largest desalination company in the world. It's the first mover in green hydrogen. We have already invested more than $5 billion on the ground, and we own about 70 gigawatt of power generation. One thing that sets Aqua Power apart and why it is not so much known here in Europe or in Milan, but very much in developing countries, is that we operate solely in developing countries. So the base is, of course, in the Middle East, but we are the largest investor in Central Asia, $20 billion, in Africa, $9 billion, and now increasingly in Southeast Asia and China. And I think that what it takes to operate in these countries, and that's why ADB is one of our key partners, more than $1.2 billion of relationship with ADB, and technology and digital, is that in these countries, we need to make a commodity, whether it's power, water, or hydrogen, green ammonia, affordable for population who are not very wealthy. And so we need to always scout the world and find the best technological solution, the best innovation, the best digital technology, the cheapest, the most affordable, the most stable financing, and bring it all together, mix it, and then go to convince the host country to do a project that will uplift the local economy.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Arcelli. And of course, we'll get to unpack some of those staggering numbers you mentioned later on in the session. Secretary Agrawal.
I am Pankaj Agrawal. I am Secretary to the Ministry of Power, Government of India. India happens to be a fast-growing major economy, and presently we have a total installed capacity of electricity generation 476 gigawatt. I would like to inform that 48% of this capacity is currently non-fossil. That means about 228 gigawatt is non-fossil. And we are very much on way to achieve the vision of our Honorable Prime Minister to have 500 gigawatt of non-fossil capacity by 2030. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And finally, DG Chloe. Cleo. Apologies.
Thank you. I get that all the time, so it's fine. I'm Cleo Kawaki. I'm the newly minted Director General for Sector Group 2, which also includes digital, and I've been the head of Office of Market Development and PPP for the last 3 years. So what we do in the Office of Market Development and PPP is bring together the public sector and the private sector through our transaction advisory. We're having about 52 mandates right now that we're operating, a lot of them in the energy sector. And with my new hat as digital head, I'm very interested in seeing how digital can bring together the benefits, of making things, what we call cheaper, faster, and better for every sector, and energy sector is one of the most important ones.
Fabulous, thank you. I was going to call you Kawawaki-san, but I think Cleo is great. Thank you all. So you've heard from such a diverse number of perspectives. I mean, this is going to be a great conversation because, of course, we have an MDB, a multilateral development bank. We've got 2 country leaders here. We also have the consultancy, the finance aspect, the private sector as well. So really a very diverse range of views. So I'm going to start with Simona first, because you said you could talk about the finance, and finance is really crucial in this sector because, as we heard from Mr. Arcelli, there's so much that's required in terms of investments into such a capital-intensive sector. So tell us a little bit about what's going on in the context of Europe. Here we sit in Milan. Of course, European regulators have made very bold climate commitments, but are their financial systems keeping pace with the capital demand that is required of this industry?
Yeah. So in Europe, the push to climate clean tech has increased significantly over the last years and over the last months, right? In the sense that the European market was facing some challenges which were mostly related to the dependency from imported raw material, the limited internal demand from the market itself, and the high energy cost, which was reducing the competitiveness of clean tech manufacturing. So all this, as we know, as European, has been subject to multiple recommendations in the Draghi report in November 2024, which have been deployed by the EU Commission in February 2025 with the Clean Energy Deal and the accompanying Affordable Energy Action Plan. And you may see that there are multiple measures that have been established, and that those goes along all the clean technologies that you may think of, and of course with the support of the relevant multinational development bank in Europe. So first and foremost, the establishment of the Industrial Decarbonization Bank, which is meant to deploy 100 billion of guarantees in 10 years with a multiple of 4 times, which means that this will reach 500 billion in 10 years together with the private sector. And it's going to be active in 2026 with a pilot already in 2025. The mandate provided to the European Development Bank to support the access to PPAs, to energy PPAs to SME and mid-corporates, which is definitely something to secure a certain cost of energy. The protection and the renovation of grids, incentivizing investments into grids. And then, I mean, we are for sure not where we should, but we can discuss about hydrogen, which over the last 2-3 years, also in Europe, has been growing pretty significantly, and with the third auction this year to facilitate hydrogen producers, which are meant to leverage EU materials quite a lot and up to certain limits. We go to nuclear with the allowances of certain state aid or the evaluation of certain state aid for 6 countries nowadays to facilitate the permission to nuclear. We go to a thorough strategy on critical energy material and raw materials, which was established in 2024, but where the first 47 projects have been recently announced in March, and they come from 13 different countries in Europe, which are committing to deploy critical energy material projects with components and processes that are established in Europe. And finally, what is going to be published in 2026 around circularity, which is meant to create a secondary market for critical raw materials. So on top of sector plans specifically for the hard-to-abate sectors and other highly important sectors for this decarbonization, including automotive, including metals, including others, which will come in the months to come. So the message I would like to convey is that in Europe, the establishment and the scale-up of clean tech has been not only a decarbonization strategy, but has been a significant part of the energy resilience strategy and also of the competitiveness strategy which the continent is trying to establish. And for sure, the MDBs are playing a significant part of it to bridge between private sector investors and companies which are accessing to funding.
Thank you for that. A really strong message then from Europe about the commitment. And as you say, there's such complexity because there's such an array of energy sources, from nuclear to smart power grids to hydrogen. So hopefully we'll get a chance to unpack some of that throughout the session. Let's move on to Minister from Turkey, Minister Çelik. We know that, as you mentioned earlier, Turkey has really emerged as a leader in renewables in this region. So what lessons do you think other developing countries can learn from your example? And what are the risks and pitfalls that they can avoid?
Thank you. Yes, the renewable energy is a top priority on our green transformation agenda, and we have huge potential and a strong framework to support investment in this space. Let me share some figures to highlight the progress. Turkey is the 5th largest producer of renewable energy in Europe and 11th largest globally. And as of today, half of our electricity comes from renewable sources, and 60% of our installed capacity is from renewables. What does this mean in practice? In 2 decades, our shifts to renewable has saved us $132 billion in natural gas imports. And it also helped us to cut 890 million tons of carbon emissions. And these outcomes is not a coincidence. It is the result of clear policy direction and ambitious goals set in our national strategies. And of course, the energy transition needs massive investment, and public funds alone won't be enough. We need to unlock the private capital, and we are making progress on that front. And our government dedication has been critical in attracting more private capital. And we also cooperate with the multinational development banks. And a great example of this collaboration is the Exim Bank's €1 billion worth of projects. And it supports Turkish exporters in complying with EU's carbon border adjustment mechanism. And this is Exim Bank's largest borrowing to date, and the first World Bank guaranteed projects designed to support the exporters' green transformation. In 2024, the project received 3 awards, including the ECA of the Year. And what does this example show us? It shows the power of effective MDB partnership to accelerate the green transition. By innovative financing model, we can make a real progress. In fact, as I said, we are focused on diversifying our energy supply. This has to include utilization of domestic and renewable resources and the nuclear energy. And our approach will not only mitigate the climate change, but also reduce the energy bill, which stood at $65 billion in 2024. And our next steps includes expanding the renewables and the nuclear, and build a stronger and greener transmission network, and scaling up energy storage and other flexibility resources. And another notable challenge is financing. We plan to invest $108 billion in renewables. And most of that will not to come from the private sector. And this is where the MDBs come in. And they can help us unlock the co-financing options and develop the innovative tools like guarantees and the equity finance. And a good recent example is our renewable energy integration investment plan developed with the climate investment funds. World Bank, IFC, and EBRD. And this investment plan aims to integrate more variable renewables into the grid. And it will mobilize over $1 billion in co-financing over time. And let me stop here.
Yes, there's a lot. There's a big list of things that Turkey is doing. It's very impressive. Thank you for that, Minister, and it's good to hear. We'll talk a little bit more about the partnership with MDBs and other international finance institutions a little bit later. But let's move on to the money factor, because, of course, that is something that is truly crucial. Of course, Mr. Arcelli, you lead a company, you mentioned earlier, that has massive investments across the board in many, many different markets. You manage a company that has $100 billion in clean energy investments. So what digital tool or platform has actually delivered the biggest leap for you and your firm in performance or cost efficiency for Aqua Power? What would that be?
Yeah. We are, as I mentioned, we are using technologies in different forms, and I think here where I would, what I would like to focus on is one on green hydrogen and green ammonia, so the green molecules, and the second is, as you say, in cost, also operational efficiencies and improvement in what we do using the technology. So let me first address green hydrogen and green ammonia, since today a lot of people are very skeptical about it. And I think that we're one of the few companies who really still believe in it and are committed and investing in that. I think that the future must have green hydrogen and green ammonia at the center of the decarbonization, but not only that, at the center of energy security, and we heard about it, and price stability. Because investors, final investors, whether they produce cars or they produce appliances or whatever, what they want is a stable price of energy that they can predict for 20, 30 years. Otherwise, they just don't make the investment because it's too volatile. So in the past 15 years, the power sector decarbonized about 40%. So the emissions today in power sector are about 40% lower. So that's a given. We don't talk about renewables anymore because renewables are not built out of ideology. They're built because they're the cheapest, the fastest, the most secure form of energy. So you will roll it out as much as you can, and what it means as much as the grid can absorb or the land that you have available, because those are land intensive type of energy. But all the other sectors have not decarbonized at all. The emissions have increased. And the only way to decarbonize those are either you electrify them, and it can go only to a certain extent, or you use a different fuel. And the only fuel that we know today is green hydrogen or ammonia, depending on the use. So that is why maybe it's not next year, maybe not the following year, but 2030, 2040, green hydrogen will need to be at the center of this. And we believe in it. We have 2 plants under construction, 1 plant under advanced development. By the way, it would have started construction already had it not been that the host country doesn't have a regulation for the wheeling of power from the power generation to the electrolyzer, which, it's not that we don't have the offtake. The offtake is there, is pushing to get it. The producer is there, we're pushing to get it, but the regulatory system is falling behind, and that's what stalling the project. So that's, you see how it's really often not the technology that is putting some brakes on the development. But the other 2 projects, one is coming in production at the end this year in 2025. It's a small project by our standard. It's as big as the largest project in operation today in Europe or in the United States. It's about 20 megawatt. For us, it's small because the other project is 2,000 megawatt. It's 100 times bigger, and is the project we're developing in Saudi Arabia together with Air Products and NEOM. That will start production at the end of next year, so the hydrogen will be available in 2027. What we see, we're now advanced development of a couple more projects, and what we see, I come to the energy security, is that yes, it is maybe expensive, but it is stable. And what I saw is that the first few months of 2025, it is cheaper to produce green hydrogen in Saudi Arabia than to produce gray hydrogen from gas in Europe. That means that if you want something predictable, something stable at a fair price, you go green hydrogen and you don't fail. And that's why we're starting to see a pickup of interest, also because not only you get the stability, but you're offsetting gas demand. And today the big debate in Europe is the gas demand that either from Russia or from the US, but it's not local anymore. We stopped producing it. That, yes, for ideological reasons, because we still have a lot of gas in Europe, but we don't want to produce it. So the only alternative is the hydrogen, where then digital and technology comes into play. One of the biggest complexity of green hydrogen, because you're producing with interruptible and non-programmable sources, wind, solar, is to make it stable so that it goes through an electrolyzer and an ammonia loop, and you don't trip, and you produce without hurting the equipment and hurting the production. So these integrated controls is something very sophisticated, and that's why we believe that only a few players, a handful of players, those with a strong experience like we are building, together with our partners, will be able to really power the future in the hard to abate. And then the other point is the technologies, the individual technologies we have. So we have basically renewables, solar and wind. Well, we have brought down the cost of renewables by 80% in the last 15 years. We achieved the lowest cost in the world in Saudi Arabia a few years ago. And then you need water. So you take the water and basically you split it in hydrogen and oxygen. People say Saudi Arabia doesn't have water. I challenge you, and I discovered when I moved there, we have more water than any other country in the world because we simply desalinate the water in the sea, which is plentiful. And in that one, we have also brought down the energy that is required to produce 1 cubic meter by 82% in the last 15 years, so that today the cost to produce it is around, let me say, between 30 and 60 cents per cubic meter, which, to give you an order of magnitude, a comparison, most of the countries here in Europe, the water is sold to the population at 1 to 2 euros per cubic meter. So you see that the price is there and it's quite affordable. So you put these two together and the land to make it, which is plentiful in Saudi Arabia, and you see why Saudi Arabia will be by far the biggest and most competitive producer of this new technology.
Absolutely wonderful. I think you pitched it so well. It's so crucial to bring down the costs, as you've said. But green hydrogen, that was such a good sales pitch that I'm sure everyone's now considering it as an energy source. We're going to move on to now Secretary Agarwal. And what was really interesting about your opening was you said that India is already about 48% non-fossil, not using fossil fuels. So I think that's a really incredible achievement. But digitalization is also crucially at the heart of what India is doing with its renewable push. So what kind of role is digitalization playing in stabilizing the grid amid all of this surge that we're hearing in intermittent renewables?
Like, digitalization is not an option. It's a necessity if you want to integrate renewable energy. The whole exercise starts from the very beginning, like when the plant is planned, how it is going to interact with the grid. So that interplay is to be simulated. Once it is commissioned, then again its interplay is to be simulated and actually observed, and interventions need to be planned. Later on, it is essential to plan our storages and also operate our storages. Like, when do you need it for reactive power generation, when do you need it for voltage control, or when do you need it for frequency control, or just for shifting the generation. So it's something which has already become very, very complex, and one needs the support of high-level simulation tools, monitoring tools, and intervention tools to operate the grid now. We have been working with the various global partners in developing the power system modeling system. And till now, we have been very, very effective. Of course, as the share of renewable resources goes up, there could be challenges like the challenges which we have recently observed in Europe, Spain, and Portugal. We don't know the exact reasons, but they were challenges. We also faced some of the challenges in our own country, in Gujarat. We had a major tripping for almost 1.5 hours because of the basically changes in the renewable energy generation and the behavior of the transmission system. So the challenge is real. We need more and more of the advanced systems based on AI and ML so that we can respond in real time. If we really go forward, then say if we go for decentralized renewable sources, then again, like we need smart metering at every home. And then this smart metering has to continuously engage with the utility systems. And then maybe like once we think about peer-to-peer trading, then there will be another level of requirement of digital systems. So I'll rest there.
Thank you for that. And we'll talk a little bit more about the push for smart meters as well a little later in the conversation. Now, DG Cleo, lovely to hear what the minister from Turkey said about the need to partner with MDBs like the ADB, for instance. So give us a sense of how ADB is helping governments, Turkey and beyond, to structure PPPs in energy security and resilience. And what are you seeing in terms of what's showing the most promise amongst them all?
So for any type of market development, I think it's all been said, but there's three components. The enabling environment, bankable projects, and money, finance. So ADB has supported all three in enabling environment for PPPs, for energy security. We look at the policy level. You know, I think, as you said, policies fall behind and you can't invest. So we help the governments to come up with policy that makes the people want to come. And then we structure the projects through our transaction advisory services, working with the government to make sure that it's a bankable project. And then the bids are transparently done, and then we come back, and Aqua, thank you so much for participating in our bids. You made them so competitive that we've gotten the best prices in the world, so thank you so much for your competitiveness and your ingenuity in adding components to it that has made innovation possible to come down with the cost. So, bankable projects, and then, of course, financing. As Minister have said, there's guarantees that we can provide. There's first loss projects, offtake guarantees, political risk guarantees. All of this can contribute to bringing down the price. And then for new technologies, you know, like AI or things that we think are a little bit more risky, but show so much cost competitiveness or efficiency, we can have special funds. I mean, it used to be that batteries are in that area because they were very expensive, but the prices have come down because the markets has been developing. So right now, well, any donors here, we're looking for funds for looking at new digital technologies, but to do the blended finance. And we're looking, or we're developing the market for more market-oriented blended finance, which is in the carbon credits, transition credits, as we call it, and for anything that we can make into a marketable, market-oriented blended finance. So from ADB, we go from the enabling environment, bankable projects, to the financing, and then we go back up again to tell, like, Minister, sir, I'm sorry, your policy may not be working too well, so let's change this or that, to have that virtuous cycle, because we have everything under one roof and we collaborate to make the environment better. Thanks.
Fantastically said. And again, once again, a great pitch for the ADB and what it does in this particular sector. It's good to hear. Now, going back to financing, that's really coming down as the crux of what's been the real challenge for many, many governments, whether it's India, it's Turkey, it's here in Europe. I mean, we've just had the terrible outage in Spain as well. So it's happening everywhere, not just developing countries. So this is so crucial that we really need to start to see a great deal of thought and restructuring in the energy sector. So moving back to you, Simona, you talked about the finance earlier. You talked about, obviously, the Decarbonisation Bank, which will be coming into play next year in 2026. In your work with financial institutions, what do they say is the single most persistent barrier that clean technologies face in accessing that crucial capital? And what kind of policy or innovation would you suggest that could help speed that up?
So the clean technologies, we have analyzed them compared to other high growth technologies that we observe in the market. And there are 3 challenges that are objective and have been observed. So the first one is the entry level of capital in the first venture debt phase, but also in the following venture debt phase, which is much higher compared to other high growth tech companies. And we are talking about 5 to 6 times at the entry level and up to 10 times in the following phases. The second point is duration. Also, our research shows that in comparison to other tech companies, the clean tech are on average on break-even close to 7 years, while the average for other types of tech companies is in the range of 3 to 4 years. And the last point is around viability of the commercial model, because the overall assumption is that there is going to be a green premium at some point in time, which has been proved to be there in some cases, but there is no clear track record of this. So what we see as overall mitigants for this. So the first one is being very clear to investors and financial institutions on the technology risk behind this clean tech, which means, first of all, that the most of technology behind the clean tech have been proved on a standalone basis in multiple cases. If we split the process in phases and we cut the process, and so getting, for example, certification, and stuff which can prove that certain part of the process are already tested. And second point, also clear business cases, which are not only financial business cases, but which are capital business cases, technological business cases. So everything which can support the building a clear element that financial institutions and investors are evaluating. The second, and in my view, the most important point to the risk is securing the supply chain. Securing the supply chain upstream, which means understanding what are the purchasers of raw material and what is their commitment in the long term, but also the classical off-takes that you have already spoken about. I.e. making sure that there are pre-commitments on the offtake. A pre-commitment of the offtake practically reduces the duration of, the perceived duration of the investment itself. And then we would also frame that this overall push that governments in emerging markets and in Europe are giving to sustainability with the concessional lending, with the facilitated policies and so on and so forth, are inevitably putting the cost of capital one level down compared to what would be another technology. And so this should be understood, but also exploited from tech companies and from banks and commercial banks as well, and private sectors along this direction. Now, some of you have talked about reducing cost. The second element is around scalability. And what we see is also how to get to scale faster. And so what could be a modular approach to have the same operating model multiplied in identical way, one close to the other. Some examples are the ones of the electric vehicle batteries and gigafactories, in order to go to market faster and to go to market with a much more stable critical mass. So all in all, the overall goal would be, number one, to de-risk, or to decrease the perception of risk, creating transparency, and to de-risk through partnership agreements, as you have discussed. and on the other side, to really properly work with the full ecosystem of investors from the private sector and the public sector to make both the durations and structure works accordingly.
Thank you for that. Yes, so important to hear the context behind some of the issues facing financing for many of these projects. So thank you for that. Let's have a perspective again from Turkey. Minister, as you look forward to Turkey's 2053 net zero target, first of all, are you optimistic the country can reach it? And secondly, what are some of the biggest financial as well as structural challenges in achieving that goal? I know we talk about finance a lot, but there's structure involved as well, isn't there?
Yeah, thank you. Let me respond to this question in four aspects. First, I will refer to our top anchor, which is the Paris Agreement and the NDC goals. And the second, I will explain how we are aligned with the European Union climate action. And the third, I will touch on Turkey's green finance ecosystem, and finally, I will share a very recent development. Now, let me unpack each of these. First, our main reference point is the Paris Agreement, and Turkey ratified the agreement and announced it is the net zero target for 2053. And we also doubled our 2030 emissions reduction target. And secondly, we are closely aligning with the EU Green Deal by our action plan. And given our customs union with the EU and the EU's climate policies, including the carbon border adjustment mechanism, it will act as an anchor for us. And we developed a low carbon roadmap for key industries like cement and iron. And this roadmap aims to reduce emissions up to 100% with an investment need of $70 billion. Third, Turkey is rapidly building its green finance ecosystem. We introduced a sustainable finance framework, and it enabled the issuance of a first green bond in April 2023. And by early 2025, ECG bonds issued abroad amounted nearly $20 billion, while domestic issuance reached 2.1 billion Turkish lira. And our national development banks also are active players in this area. One of our national development banks called TSKB established a venture capital fund in 2024 with World Bank. And it is the first in its kind, and both in Turkey and globally. And also another development bank, public development bank, TKYB, now dedicates 58% of its loan portfolio to renewables and energy efficiency projects. And we have also secured a $3.2 billion climate finance package from MDBs, including EBRD and the World Bank. And the first package is now almost fully utilized with qualified investment. And finally, let me share a significant update. Our parliament is currently reviewing a new climate law. And this law will become a foundation of our climate commitment and set up a national emission trading system. Let me stop here. Thank you.
Thank you. No, that's a real commit from Turkey, and great to hear those examples of how you are partnering with many other financing mechanisms to enable your goals. Now, back to you, Mr. Ocelli. I was so excited to hear about green hydrogen a little earlier. You did tell us a lot about it, but it's still sort of, it's not been fully the particular area that most governments and countries are completely convinced in. You know, the jury is still out on green hydrogen. So it's often called the fuel of the future, as you say, but it still faces many, many digital financial uncertainties. So what is needed from regulators, from governments, investors, to make it truly commercially viable? And of course, you're a big investor, but how can you get others onto your train?
Yeah, I can mention some of the enablers, because I believe in markets, and I believe that with ingenuity you can develop offtakes without particular subsidies, but certainly some help can accelerate the pickup. I think first there's a matter of building energy bridges. So the first version of the European regulation was we're going to produce it here. And then it was clear that you need a lot of land, that it will be more expensive. So to go fast through this process and then focus on a few selected number of partners and focus on making it happen. And I think that Saudi Arabia today, with Vision 2030, we have the evidence of the speed, the magnitude of what we can do. By the way, also Turkey is taking great steps on renewables, and there's proximity, there's local demand, so I don't want to single out, but of course it's the country that I know the most. And India, likewise, is doing a lot to promote the industry. So I think these will create, by the way, a broader connection between North and South, which helps also to kind of, part of the Paris Agreement is how do we move money to develop renewables in developing world. That's a simple way to do it. And actually, personally, my personal opinion, if we don't do it, and I come from Europe, if we don't do it, simply the industry will move to Saudi Arabia and Turkey and India. And so I think it's a very defensive move for Europe and developed economies to go fast and secure the land and the agreement to do that. I think that the discussion between the governments is picking up, and so I'm very encouraged about that. The next one, of course, it's a very capital-intensive industry, and so we need to find the most effective way to finance it. And that's where multilateral banks, but also, banks like institutions like the EIB or European institution is really how do you channel the money to support it. And I think that today we see a lot of support in Europe if we want to focus on this part of the world, but then we can also talk about China, Japan, Korea. So if we focus on this part of the world, so a lot of measures are being rolled out, but really they're a little bit fragmented and the scale is not sufficient. So if you take the initiatives in Germany, for instance, great, good results so far, but it's good for the across the fence supplies, small in size, for a few number of years. I think the total amount is about 100,000 tons of green hydrogen for 9 years. What we need really is not the first 9 years. I think I can sign any contract tomorrow for 7, 9, 10 years. The problem is everybody's expecting then in 25 years the price will be lower. I don't want to be blocked or locked into a long-term contract, then the project doesn't happen. So rather what I need is kind of like a CFD for the next 10 or 15 years, not the first 10, because the first 10 we can do already and economically. So it's really to beat these expectations. And the third one is, of course, you have to be realistic in a way. So if you think about the great success that we achieved in renewable energy and battery storage, so prices are now well below any fossil fuel because you reach the scale. To reach that, either you had, kind of like a tariff or a mandated requirement on some use. The tariff is something that created a lot of questions before. Did we use the money wisely? So I think that the mandating some of the demand and properly, growing it over time, I think it's a very effective way because it really forces people to look, find a solution, work together, and make it happen at the lowest cost. And I think that that is what guarantees at the end the most effective solution. So I think that this is what a lot of governments in Europe are working on to translate into the national legislation the targets of RED 3. And I think that a lot of these are already being diluted because people say, well, it's difficult to do it. But the fact is, if we start talking, and I take my blame that we have not been present enough here to tell the story. So that's why we want to be more present now in the coming months to say we can do it together, but you need some level of certainty in the regulation, because a lot of the buyers are still saying, until I see it out, I don't take commitments because I don't know what the world will be like. And we saw how regulation affects all the decisions you're taking. So if we do that early and we put some levels, or we channel the financing, I think that all that will contribute to make it feasible in a very quick time.
Thank you for that, and great to hear that commitment from your firm, and also, I guess, Europe taking a leadership role in this, in enabling renewable energy and being really committed. But of course, other countries as well in Asia, like China, for instance, taking a leadership role.
By the way, if I can compliment,
Yes,
because you made
go
me
on.
think about something. Our second project in Uzbekistan is to produce fertilizers in Uzbekistan. Green fertilizers. Why?
Fascinating.
Because Uzbekistan is exporting 1 million tons to Europe of fertilizers, and they want to future-proof against CBAM. And so they're doing the green, they say, we're going to offtake it, and the other country that I was mentioning, same, to produce fertilizers to export to Europe. That's what I'm saying, that if we don't take the decisions in Europe today, we're simply exporting the industry tomorrow in countries that are being faster at taking the decisions.
That's right. Very good point. Thank you for that. And of course, in the context of the current situation with trade barriers being at the highest in a century, that's also something very important to factor in. Now, turning a little bit away from green hydrogen, let's move on to India's journey right now. And I know that India is taking a very, very strong role in really rolling out smart meters across the country. I mean, this is a huge country. This is a huge challenge as well. So how is the government ensuring that these upgrades are equitable, affordable, truly transformative for everyone in India?
Thank you, Sharanjit, for raising this issue. We have taken up a smart metering program involving roughly 270 million smart meter installations. And right now, we have done about 10% of that. It has taken us close to a couple of years building up the basic configuration, the standards, the communication protocols, the processing protocols. But now the program has taken off, and every day we are setting up roughly 100,000 smart meters. So the run rate is still not meeting the expectation of the leadership, but yes, we have really accelerated the run rate. I would also like to inform about decentralized renewable energy programs. A very large program for rooftop solar, we call it PM Suryaghar, Pradhan Mantri Suryaghar. That means every house is solar empowered. So to that extent, like it's programmed to cover 10 million homes. And in less than 12 months of the launch of the program, we have already covered 1 million homes. And we need to actually triple the run rate to hit the target given by the Honorable Prime Minister. So Honorable PM has actually taken up the energy security to the next level, like it's a family level, where he has taken the whole discourse on the energy security. And particularly if we talk about the electricity requirements, and maybe this can also cater to their mobility requirements once we transform the mobility sector, like the two-wheelers, and even the cooking option, because once we transform the cooking requirement from the traditional fuels or the gas to basically the electricity-based cooking. So that's a long-term vision, and the country is working in this direction. The more we integrate renewable energy at the decentralized manner, we need more and more of digitization. The smart meters actually cut down the operational costs, but also provide us huge quantum of data on the demand patterns, on the generation patterns, because so many solar panels, about more than 30 gigawatt, will be there in the next 3 years in individual households. And in a very robust manner, we need to have the understanding of demand, the generation patterns, how the local grids are going to behave, and how it is going to impact the national grid. So we are conscious of that, and we are actually building up the applications on that. There is another initiative of the government, which is basically solarizing the agriculture. So in terms of agriculture demand, like we provide almost 18% of my electricity goes to meet the agriculture demands. So it's a huge area to address. And what we are doing is we are not just installing the solar pumps, we are also solarizing the distribution service stations, like the 11,000 volt level, 11 kV level. We are putting in small, like 1 to 5 megawatt size of solar generating stations. And that is actually driving the whole solarization of agriculture. So with this overall scheme of things, the digitization has really taken a front stage, and it is the topmost priority of the government. We are also working with our startups and also with our global partners to basically develop the applications at the earliest. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yes, I mean, a huge challenge, but so incredible to hear the steps that India is taking. I mean, it is ultimately the world's most populous nation, so there's a real need for energy, and so extraordinary that so much of that is renewable. Cleo, finally, I think I might come to you before I turn to the questions, because we are getting many wonderful questions from the audience, so thank you all for submitting your questions. But I guess, you know, once again, we want to hear about ADB's role, which is a really fundamental role, as you stated at the start. We hear so much about how these digital energy projects are high risk, they're very capital intensive. So tell us a little bit more about how ADB is really trying to blend finance, trying to structure the crucial guarantees to make these a lot more bankable for the private sector.
So if I may, Aqua stole our idea because we were talking to a certain country about doing green hydrogen, and then to put up a small facility for doing a pilot project. Then I went back 2 months later and they say they already signed with you. So speed of private sector. So what we do is try to see how we can pilot the projects first. And we can do this through, one of our favorite is through the regional cooperation networks, meaning we have the Central Asia Regional Economic Cooperation, we have ASEAN, we have South Asia. At these forums, we can introduce new technologies and create a little bit of competition on who wants to adopt, and then do the pilot projects, and then go from there into the real projects. But, you know, the ADB is not a technology company, right? We need the ideas, we need the inventiveness of the private sector to come up with the right technology. And how do we do that? So, I mean, we do our marketing, and of course we have our ADB Ventures to support the startups to come in. And the startups are not only from the country itself, but Indian startups that want to come into a wider different countries context. And you have such a brilliant incubation system in your country to do the innovative projects. We'd like to get those countries to the wider Asia to, well, do things faster, cheaper, and better. And we want to take some of the risks away so we can bring down the risk premium to that. And exactly what you're saying, the module kind of approach, the capital approach, we can support all of that in the development of the technologies.
Wonderful to hear. Now, we've got about another 20 minutes left in the session. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn over to the fantastic questions that we're getting from the audience. So thank you all for submitting them. Here's a question there's a number of questions with 3 votes, which is the most number of votes that each question is getting. So to Marco, are there any partnerships that Aqua has developed with MDBs in green hydrogen? And to ADB, and particularly Cleo, what is the position of the ADB to green hydrogen? Does it engage in countries to support this area? So really fascinating, because you've really piqued everyone's interest in green hydrogen. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, so first we have all our finance team, from the CFO to the head of finance and manager of finance in all these projects. So, you know, we're here to collect money from all of you. because we invest 20 billions per year, but we're still growing faster, so we don't generate enough of our own. So, we want to walk away with a lot of bags of, if not money, agreements. We have worked on the 2 projects that we have launched in different ways. So the first one was one of the most impressive project financing deals of the year, because it's more than $6 billion of the 8.5 total, with 23 banks from around the world. And the great idea that the team had was we could finance everything with regional banks, but we didn't want to, because we wanted to involve Americans, Europeans, Japanese, Chinese banks all together, so that we could have something that could be replicated, if not with a selection of them, because they had become already knowledgeable. And it took 4 years to develop that project, and it took less than a year to develop the second project, because of this experience that we had gained. The second project, then every project is complicated in its own way. So, you get into a different country, different partner, with all the complexity that you have in project finance and the local regulations. So I think that we're still learning how to get the most, but I think that we see a lot of traction from all the MDBs to work together, because they see that this is really going to be a game changer for the world, and we see a lot of appetite to participate.
Well, let's hear from the MDB themselves. So, Cleo, what's your take on green hydrogen?
So way long time ago, in 2016, 15, when I was energy director, I tried to do green hydrogen in one of the countries because, and someone's smiling over there, one of the biggest drains on the finances for winter was that they had to buy fuel, whereas in summer they had lots of hydro. You can imagine which country it is. And if we could store seasonal power from water, hydropower to hydrogen, green hydrogen, then they would be saving about $20 billion. Okay, so that was our proposal, and we tried. And I think it was only last year that the government actually bought on and started the project. So we're all in for green hydrogen, but the one I know, maybe it's different now. I have been away from energy for a little while, but the 20% conversion rate, is that going to be better, do you see?
Of course it will. So there's a progress in technology. We see it already on electrolyzers. By the way, electrolyzers on the first project are not the same as the second project, and we continue to look at further advancement. But not just that, it's the battery storage that today reached, it's probably, I would say, a third of the cost we had a year and a half ago or 2 years ago. So to tell you how fast this is going, and then I think that the other is, as you start to operate, is really to optimize the whole system. So it's not just the single equipment, because today the projects where we're working, it's really, in the 60s, the overall utilization of the system. So it's a fine balance between how much renewables you put versus the load factor that you put in the electrolyzer and the ammonia loop if you want to export. So every component needs to be optimized, but the whole system needs to be optimized.
Yeah, great to put each other on the spot. That's fantastic. Love to see that. Now, this other question, we mentioned obviously the recent headlines around Spain's blackout, which was truly, made news all over the world. It was so shocking that it was happening right here in Europe. So this question for Simona, the recent blackout in Spain shows that more resilient grids are needed. So how will this affect the market and energy systems?
Yeah. So I think grids are the one topic which is this year most probably most debated for renewables, and also where there is consensus that there is a huge value pool also for commercial investors and banks to work on. Now, the renovation of grids, however, requires huge and significant investments. as we were discussing at the beginning, there are some here and there programs to facilitate access to facilitated findings for grids. And I would love to take this as twofold. So first of all, grids is also a matter of resilience, because one of the main problem of renewables so far is still the fact that the underlying infrastructure is not resilient to intermittency. And so, yes, renewables are mature, we can scale and so on and so forth, but if we don't solve for that, we will face another Spain in 10 days, right? And the second point is how to think about grids, but also beyond grids. So we have talked quite a lot about green hydrogen and how green hydrogen could help serve some regions where maybe the investment in grids is not efficient. We may also talk about nuclear with small nuclear reactors, right, where indeed the initial investment cost is lower, the ramp-up period is also quite easy, but the regulatory landscape is not there and the concessions are not there exactly to have the scheme and the rule of the game to play in this camp. And so my view is that grid is indeed one of the most important issues to tackle at this point in time, not only for decarbonization, but also for security and resilience of electrification. And in parallel, to also think to this ecosystem as all the interconnections and interdependencies and how complementary technology like clean hydrogen and nuclear can support.
Thank you for that. And I think nuclear deserves a whole different panel to itself because there's lots of implications, political implications with that. Cleo, do you want to
if I may continue on the grid strengthening point, as you said, it's very expensive to do grid strengthening, and a lot of our countries have very old grids. So on the digital pathway, there's very interesting, we call it, models coming up, as you know, on the preemptive maintenance. And that could save a lot of money on just doing just-in-time maintenance, and that will help us to strengthen the grid. Of course, as our president said with his big gesture that we're going to invest $10 billion in the ASEAN grid, will be a supporting grid strengthening, but I think we have to be very smart in using digital technologies to bring down that cost.
Thank you. Thanks for that. And in fact, that's another question, I think a related question from the Pigeonhole app for Cleo, and I guess for India as well, Secretary Agarwal, if you want to take this question. Each speaker mentions the importance of projects being market-oriented, ensuring and enabling an environment for the private sector. What about ensuring affected communities are taken care of?
So let me first start with the investment requirement of India in the power sector. In our assessment, we will be requiring investment of close to $500 billion over the next 7 years. So with that level of requirement, we welcome all participants, all global participants, to join in our India story. Second is, I already mentioned about the development of decentralized renewable energy resources. The whole idea has been to provide energy security to the community in a sustainable manner, and it should be affordable. The Government of India is providing up to, I would say, 60% grant to support the household level solarization right now. And the whole idea is that to make every household energy secure in the long run. So, thank you.
Thank you for that. Cleo? And maybe even Minister Çelik can also mention what's happening in Turkey. But let's hear from Cleo first.
Well, the affected communities, there's a lot of types of affected communities. I mean, is it the people that are near the facilities? Is it on the side of, well, where the infrastructure goes first? I mean, there's a lot of aspects to that. We have our safeguard policies that go into looking at what kind of effects are there. And of course, we want to have, well, win-win for everyone. But even if we don't, we have our accountability mechanism. So people who we missed out perhaps can come to ADB to get resolution. And that's, I think, one of the pluses of having an MDB in your project, because we make sure that people's voices are heard.
Wonderful. And Minister, let's get a perspective from Turkey, because obviously it is about, representing communities, making sure that they are catered for. What is your perspective from Turkey?
Thank you. Let me share our targets for renewable energy. In fact, I want to share with you. The first, we will increase the solar and wind installed capacity to 120 gigawatts by 2035. And this represents, in fact, nearly 4 times of the level in 2024. And second, we plan to reach 5 gigawatts offshore wind capacity by 2035. Third, we will develop a hydrogen value chain targeting 5 gigawatts of electrolyzer capacity by 2035. And in addition to these energy goals, we are also working on the policy side. We are preparing an updated NDC and developing a green finance strategy and action plan to drive green transformation. And subject to the market conditions, our ministry also planning to issue new ECG labeled bonds in international markets in 2025. And also we are also designing a national green taxonomy, aligning with the EU standards to guide private sector sustainable investments. Also, we are actively collaborating with the MDBs, and we have secured financing from MDBs such as World Bank, EBRD, AIIB, ISDB, as well as the government loans like the KfW and the commercial banks. And over the last 5 years period, we signed $6.2 billion in energy-related loan agreements.
That's wonderful. And I'm assuming all of that will absolutely benefit the communities in Turkey as well, which is what the question was regarding. But it's wonderful to hear. We are running out of time, so I am going to take maybe one last question from the audience before turning it over to Priyanka Vijayatunga. So this, again, is a question that perhaps, again, for Marco or Cleo, is energy efficiency as important as green power generation? Which should be prioritized, or can we have both? That's a great question, by the way.
Yeah,
Who wants to take that?
I don't want to answer because it's energy efficiency by far. I tell you, in Saudi Arabia, I freeze. They keep 16 degrees. If they bring it to 21, power demand goes down 25% and I'm dead.
Okay.
So we should complement the two, certainly. And a lot of time it's, energy efficiency about everybody's use. I mean, just scrolling your iPhone, it creates electric demand that is sometimes futile, air conditioning, and a lot of spillage we have even before you need to make the investment. And of that one, we don't speak a lot, I think.
Okay. Thank you. Cleo?
So energy efficiency is vitally important because the energy you don't use, the energy you don't have to produce. And especially this is important for peak times because the peak expense, as you say, it's the most expensive. So with the smart metering, if we can see, on our phones, like, oh, electricity is costing so much right now because of time of day or demand-based, peak-based pricing, and we can turn off things or not use the aircon too high, I don't know, too low, or to not do the wash at that time, I mean, demands would go down, and then we wouldn't have to have those peak load threats. So again, AI predicting the demand would be very effective on lowering costs. So very much cheaper to have it rather than to build new plants.
That is a wonderful way, I think, to end this very interesting conversation that we've had. So thank you, Cleo. But before we end completely, once again, perhaps a big round of applause, but I do have to hand it over to our closing speaker. So once again, a big round of applause to our wonderful panelists. What a spectacular session. We have learned so much about the different demands for energy and how we're going to really enable digital pathways to a sustainable energy future. So now I think if the panelists want to come off the stage, because I'm now going to have to introduce Priyanka Vijayatunga. He's the Senior Director of Energy for ADB for our final wrap-up. Priyanka, the stage is yours.
Good afternoon, distinguished panelists, colleagues, and friends. In fact, I have the easier task of delivering these closing remarks after a wonderful panel discussion covering virtually everything we can think of in these three spaces: digital, energy, and PPP. Thank you all for being part of this truly dynamic and thought-provoking discussion on fusion of energy, digital, and PPP spaces for the betterment of the society. Over the past 90 minutes, we heard deep insights from across public and private sectors on what it really takes to power the future through digital innovation. The key point which stands out: clean energy transition will happen at the pace and the scale we need only with digital technologies embedded at every stage in the value chain. As the Secretary Pankaj rightly said, digitalization is not an option, but a necessity. In fact, use of digital technologies in some form has always been part of energy sector development, all of us know very well. However, rapid advancement of digital technologies and the need to expand clean energy deployment provides enormous opportunities for this fusion. From power planning to generation, from transmission and to end use, digital tools are already changing the way energy systems function. AI-based forecasting, smart metering, digital twins, and blockchain, all of these are no longer just pilots, but proof of concepts. They are being deployed in the field, in emerging markets, often under challenging conditions, and they are delivering results, as we heard during the panel discussion very well. We also talked about enabling environment, because technology innovation and intention to deploy on their own are not enough. We need policy and regulatory foundation that allows it to scale. Governments play a central role in bringing policies, defining standards, managing risks, and ensuring affordability and access. But these challenges cannot be tackled in silos. They require close collaboration between policymakers, regulators, developers, financiers, and development partners like ADB. In all these efforts, we cannot forget the need to keep in mind social inclusion. Digital pathways must be designed with equity in mind, making sure that rural communities, women, youth, and vulnerable populations are not left behind. And that as we build smart systems, we are also building smart workforces through training, skilling, reskilling, upskilling, whatever you call it, and entrepreneur support. Let me underscore something that came through strongly in the discussion. The private sector is not just a source of financing, it is a critical engine of innovation, operational efficiency, and speed. What is needed is the right structure through PPPs, blended finance, and transparent procurement to channel that innovation towards sustainable development goals. ADB is proud to be working across all these fronts, whether it's supporting offshore wind development and smart power networks, or battery storage and digital metering across different regions in Asia and the Pacific. We are actively helping countries to design the energy systems of the future and ensuring those systems are resilient, inclusive, and digitally enabled. But there is much more to do. The scale of investment scale is enormous. The pace of technological change is accelerating, and the stakes, climate, competitiveness, energy security have never been higher. Still, I leave today's discussion with great optimism. Why? Because insights we heard were not just theoretical, they are grounded in real-world experience, as you heard very well during the discussion. We saw a shared sense of urgency, but also shared sense of opportunity. We have three key takeaways from today's seminar. Naturally, digital innovation is the key to scaling the clean energy transition. From smarter grids to AI-powered systems, these technologies are already unlocking new levels of efficiency and resilience. The second, private sector's role is critical. Innovation, capital, and speed from the private sector are essential to accelerate the transformation which we are looking for. Public-private partnerships are the bridge that turns ambition to reality. With the right risk sharing, blended finance, and digital tools, we can unlock solutions that are scalable, inclusive, and impactful. Let me close by extending my heartfelt thanks to our distinguished panel of speakers for their excellent contributions, insights, and generosity in sharing their time. I know their time is extremely valuable. We have the best of the panelists which can think of for this particular session. To our moderator, Sharanjit, for masterfully guiding the conversation. Thank you very much. And to all those who are in the audience, without you, of course, there cannot be a seminar like this, and for being part of this important and timely dialogue. Let us together carry the momentum forward. Let us keep asking hard questions, and let's work together to transform digital ambition into real-world energy revolution. Thank you very much.